guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be kicking off a vlog that I am so excited about. I hinted at this during my December TBR, but I am doing a secret TBR for this vlog that is based on the theme of books that have just haunted me for years, meaning books that I just have gone back and forth on whether I wanted to read them or not. I really wanted to, but there were just certain things that kind of held me back. Honestly, I don't 100% know what was holding me back, maybe just the hype in general, but I just have not ever picked these up mostly because I wasn't sure I actually wanted to read them, and I just felt like, you know what, I'm just going to get these books. There was a great deal going on with Barnes & Noble for them, so I was like, I'll just get these books and I'm going to read them, and then I can just stop thinking about them. Like, they'll be done, I'll have read them, and we can move on with my life. So these books are very popular, which is why I was very excited to do this one, because I know you guys will have heard of these books. And like I said, I'm just excited to kind of just get these, I don't want to say get these out of my life, but like get these to move forward in my life so I can stop thinking about whether or not I actually want to read them. So let's go through them. There's 3 of them, and I think this is the order I'm going to read them in. Definitely this first one I mentioned will be the first one I read, and then we'll kind of see how I feel, what my mood is after that. But the first one I have here is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yes, I am finally going to read this. Like I said, all of these books are books that for one reason or another I just have been like, I don't know if I actually want to read them. Like, I'm not sure. Very back and forth. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just dive into it. So this is the first of those I am going to read. So if you don't happen to know what this book is about, this book follows, I believe, a reporter who is chosen to interview this famous actress from the 1960s, maybe? Okay, it looks like she starts in the 50s and then goes through to the 80s. And she's very well known in this world. And she's notorious for having had 7 husbands. And so we go through each one of these husbands while also discussing the actual love of her life. At least that's what I have heard about it. I've heard it's incredible from many different people in my real life and on BookTube. I will say, I think all of these are sad. Like, this one might be the least sad as far as like what I've heard about them. I've heard the least about this being sad compared to the other 2. So I may be needing a lot of tissues, and I may have a headache a few times this month after crying over these books, but we'll see how it goes. So yes, this is definitely the first one I'm going to read. It will be my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book as well, which will be really exciting. The second book that I'm planning to read as of right now, although like I said, it may change based on my mood, is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Did I say that right? Maybe. I don't know pretty much anything about this except that it's really sad. I believe it follows a group of friends and their different kind of paths in life, and that's all I know about it. And I think the reason I have not read it is because I've heard that it's so sad, which is absolutely ridiculous. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know I love tragedies. Like, one of my favorite authors of all time is Thomas Hardy, who is notorious for being a tragic writer. So I don't really know why that was scaring me away, but something about the way people described it scared me away. But now I'm just going to read it, because then I can stop thinking about it and I just will know how I feel about it and can move on. So that is one. This is definitely a long one, so I'm a little nervous about doing this month, but I think I can do it. I think I'll be able to do it. And the final book I have finally purchased, and I'm just going to read and get it out of my mind, is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. If you've been on this channel for a while, you know one of my favorite books of all time is Circe by Madeline Miller. Love that book. And I don't know if part of the reason why I haven't read this is because I'm worried I'll like it better than Circe, which is so stupid. But like, I just am sentimentally attached to my love for Circe at this point. And so part of me is like, I don't want it to be better, but I also don't want it, on the other hand, I also don't want it to be disappointing. Like, I don't want it to be like too far beneath Circe. So I don't know. I think way just overthought it. But because Madeline Miller is writing another Greek mythology book soon, and which I believe is about Persephone, and I'm so excited for that, I decided, you know what, let's just go for it. Let's just do this. So I'll have read both of her big well-known novels. I also have read Galatea, so I will have read all of her Greek myth stuff that are currently out, and that will be great. And I'm expecting all of these to wreck me, really. So I will let you know my thoughts on things and where I'm at in the next club. Hey guys, so it is December 11th, Sunday, and I have been sick for a few days. I tested negative for COVID when I did a test, but it's possible it was COVID, or it's definitely some sort of flu something. So, yeah, I feel myself slowly getting out of it. Hopefully by tomorrow, Monday, I can get back to work and be okay. But it gave me some time to finish Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I do have thoughts on it. I'm trying to organize them still. I ended up giving it a solid 4-star, both on Storygraph and Goodreads, so no decimals on this one. I thought the writing was great. I thought the storytelling was great, and I find Evelyn Hugo to be a very fascinating character. And I was impressed at how well Taylor Jenkins Reid balanced the two timelines, because most of it is spent in the past. But when we were pulled back to the present, I wasn't like disappointed or sad or anything. I felt like it was a good balance where we just got those little snippets of the present tense to show kind of where we're at right now. Remind the reader that we're waiting for some sort of connection with this narrator, with this journalist. So I was very impressed with that. And like I said, I'm interested in Evelyn Hugo as a character, but I don't know. I think there are certain types of stories that I end up just preferring to see in film format. So reading them, I'm less inclined to enjoy it. For example, romance. I don't really read romance ever because I prefer to watch it on screen. I feel like I like bright flashes of those kinds of stories. I don't really like to read it being told in a book format. I don't know why exactly, but that's the way it is. And honestly, most contemporary stories, that's how I feel about it. And I feel like with this one, I kind of realized that the whole like famous person exploration I prefer in film format. And even in film format, it's just never going to be my favorite type of story. I did really like the Elvis film from this year, and I liked Bohemian Rhapsody, so I do like movies like that, but they're never going to be favorite movies. And I prefer them in film format over book format, I think is just how I ended up feeling, especially when they're told in the first person. Like, I think having this story told in first person from Evelyn Hugo's perspective, I guess I was like more irritated with her and like less inclined to sympathize with her. But I also don't think you're necessarily supposed to sympathize with her. Maybe on some level, obviously, with her relationship situation, and she's suffering a lot of prejudice and abuse and a lack of opportunity to be herself and still get what she wants. And so there's sympathy there, but there's also the fact that a lot of her issues she ends up kind of creating herself, but she's willing to admit that, which is why she is such an interesting character. So anyway, I feel like I'm so all over the place with my thoughts on it. Basically, I did really enjoy it, gave it 4 stars, like I said. I just don't think I loved it as much as a lot of other people do. So that's how I ended up feeling about it. I still did enjoy a lot about it. And like I said, I think the best part about it really was Evelyn Hugo as a character. I think she's fascinating to analyze and ponder on, but I just feel like she's not very likable, which isn't like required. I mean, obviously I love Wuthering Heights and nobody in that is really likable. So it's not just that, it's just, I don't know, there was just not that it factor that made me super engaged in the story and super care. And I do think part of it is just the famous person storyline that I just don't like in that format. So anyway, those are my general thoughts on Evelyn Hugo. I'll probably give a little bit more thoughts at the end of this vlog about all 3 of these books. And hopefully at that point, I'll have my thoughts a little bit more organized about it, because I feel like it's just one of those books where I can see it's a great book and there are things I really found fascinating about it, but like the process of reading it wasn't, like, I wasn't super engaged in it, if that makes sense. And like afterwards I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever care to reread that ever again. So anyway, all of that being said, I am starting A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Did I say that right? Possibly not. But anyway, I will be starting this. I'm expecting it to make me weep. Evelyn and Hugo, though, did not make me cry. That was another thing that made me feel like it wasn't going to be a favorite, was because there were sad things going on and I didn't even have the like desire to cry. Like, it was one of those moments where it was like, oh, that's sad, but like it didn't really make me feel anything. So I feel like I just wasn't connected with the book enough for any real emotion. But anyway, A Little Life, I am starting it, and I will let you know as I go along my thoughts on it. Hey guys, so it is the 20th, I believe, of December. It's the Tuesday before Christmas, and clearly it's been a hot minute since I've updated this, but that is because I am only 164 pages into A Little Life out of 800, and I just have realized, so first of all, let's give thoughts on this first, and then I'll tell you a plan, because I really want to finish this vlog by the end of December, and I have about a little over a week and a half left to read it all. So, thoughts on this first. Like I said, I am really loving this. Like, the fact that I'm only 160 pages into it is not because I'm not liking it. It's because it's a very slow-moving story, and so it's hard for me to read. There's also not a lot of dialogue, which I don't know about other people, but dialogue I usually am able to read faster. I think it's just because it's the way people talk. It's easier to kind of skim through it, not skim through it, but read it without necessarily sub-vocalizing quite as much. And of course, when there's dialogue, there's less words on the page, so it's a lot easier to get through it faster. Meanwhile, this has a lot of just kind of describing scenes and describing events and things and not very much dialogue, which usually would bother me, but in this case it's not. Beyond the fact that it is really slow going. Like I said, I'm really loving the characters in this. I'm already very emotionally attached to them. The only thing I really knew going into this book, besides that it was about 4 friends from college, is that it's one of the saddest books ever. And yet, this first little bit has been very cozy. The first part in particular, when we're getting to know the different friends, particularly the 3 friends that aren't Jude, who is kind of like the main focal point of the story. That was really cozy because they're all just out of college. They're in a very similar situation to me at this time in my life. They're all very artsy and just have these different passions and pursuits, and I really found that part really cozy to read about. I have teared up a couple of times already in this book. Jude is just such a sweet and devastating character, and so I'm very curious to see what we'll learn about him, but also because this book is 800 pages, I'm very curious to see what ends up happening, how the story ends up building up, because I just really don't know where it's going to end up going beyond. I have one prediction for how things are going to end with Jude in particular, but I also feel like because it's so long, I feel like there's probably a lot more detail that I don't have quite yet. So I'm very curious to see where that goes, where the other friends go. But ultimately, yes, loving this. I honestly think if it could be a favorite of the year, hopefully, like I said, I can finish it by the end of December. That is my goal. I really, really need to finish this. So anyway, that's how I'm feeling about it. Think it's going to be a favorite of the year, which is surprising. Honestly, of the 3 in this video, this was the one I was most unsure about because it's probably the one I was tempted to get in the past the least compared to the other 2, but it still worked for my idea for this vlog. So anyway, really liking this. But like I said, because it's going so slow, and really, first of all, I could spend a certain amount of time on it and only read like 20 pages. And so it's slowed that way. It's also hard for me to read a lot of it all at once because it's so slow going. I don't want to say I'm bored because that's not quite the feeling I'm having, because like I said, I'm really enjoying it and I have really high hopes for it. I just think because it's a slower book and there's a lot going on, but also not a lot going on, it's just really hard for me to focus on this particular story for a long period of time. So it's just been a struggle. So I still intend to finish this by the end of the month, but I think I'm going to get started on Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, because if I remember correctly with Circe by Madeline Miller, which is one of my favorites, I did read that relatively quickly. So I feel like this one will be a faster read. So in moments where I have a lot of reading time, but maybe I've read several pages of this and I just need a break already, I can pick up Song of Achilles and still be getting through these, because I have, like I said, less than 2 weeks to finish both of these for sure. And I also want to finish Can of Reid Tales. So got a lot going on for the end of the month, which is fine. It's good. I mean, there's Christmas coming up. I do have less plans going on for the rest of the month for Christmas. You would have already seen my family and I going to Luminaria, which is a big lights festival that happens near my house, and we always love walking through that. And then I had, of course, my annual Christmas party with some of my roommates from college, and so we did that. You would have seen a little bit from that as well. So from here on out, I don't really have any plans. I would like to do a little Christmas get together, at least with my friend Kariana, who is the one I go to Shakespeare Festival with, and or possibly a New Year's kind of event with her. But beyond that, I don't have any plans really. So hopefully that means after work, before work, depending on when my shift starts, I'll be able to get a little more reading in. I also, next week, for the last week of the year, I have half the week that I am not working. So, and it's going to go a little beyond. So basically, there are 2 halves to the store I work at. There's the church distribution side, and then there's the bookstore side. And each side has its own set of supervisors. There's a full-time supervisor and a part-time supervisor for each side, and then a manager that's over everything. I am the full-time supervisor for the church distribution side, and there is a full-time supervisor for the bookstore side named Lori, and we decided for the week after Christmas, after all the chaos, that we would both take half the week off, use some of our PTO, and take a few days off. So Lori ended up wanting Monday through Wednesday off that week, so I am going to be working Monday through Wednesday, and then I will have Thursday through Saturday off, but also we're closed on Sunday, so I also will have Sunday off. And the day after New Year's, that Monday, I think it's the 2nd of January, right? Yes. I will also have off because we just automatically get that paid off because of it being a bank holiday for the full-time workers in the store. I actually usually would get the day after Christmas this year off, that Monday, because again, bank holiday, but because of the situation that the deal I came up with the other supervisor, I am working that day, but I will also be paid time and a half for working on that day and still be able to get another day off paid in replacement of that, so I'm not using as much PTO, which basically, all that to say, I have like 5 days in a row this next week that I don't have to work, and that's really exciting, and hopefully I'll be able to get a lot of reading done. We'll see how it goes, but I am very excited about it, to sum that up. So anyway, I just wanted to give this little update because it's been a while and because I will be hopefully starting Song of Achilles probably today. I have read a good chunk of this. Okay, a good chunk meaning probably like 20 pages. But still, I've read some of this already. I'll probably read more tonight. It's definitely one that I can read throughout the day, but I kind of have to break it up more. So like I said, we'll be breaking it up with this. I need to read Canterbury Tales as well, but I've kind of started with Canterbury Tales, just reading it, planning on reading it those last few days of the month because I keep missing my scheduled days for those stories. So anyway, that's a completely different discussion. I am kind of sad though, because I don't think I'm going to get to some of the other books I was hoping to read this month, which I knew I wasn't going to get to all of them, but I had hoped to at least get to 1 or 2 more besides these 2 or these 3. I of course did start off the month getting through 3 books, finishing 3 books, so there is that, but things like Lady Anna by Anthony Trollope I had on my TBR for this month, and I don't think that's gonna happen. My rereads of Harry Potter and Mistborn and Little Women probably aren't going to happen either. I really need to reread Little Women, but that may be something that I don't do until like March, most likely, which I guess would be kind of fun because they're the March sisters, so that could be kind of fun. Anyway, I am so rambling on, so I'm going to end this clip here. I will update you probably when I finish Song of Achilles, unless by some miracle I finish A Little Life first, or if I end up just needing to rant about something that happens in one of these books. I'm expecting both of these to make me sob. This one I already know is going to make me sob. I already, like I said, have teared up a little bit. Jude is just so sweet, and Willem is so sweet, and then JB and Malcolm I don't have as much attachment to yet, but Willem and Jude just get me. So anyway, there's that, and I'm sure Song of Achilles will also wreck me because I know how their story ends. So anyway, all that to say, that's where I'm at. I will see you in my next clip. Okay guys, so it is the 29th of December. I don't even remember the last time I updated this. It was probably like at least a week ago. And I just need to give you just a quick update of where I'm at because in the next 3 days, my goal is to finish both of these books. I am halfway through A Little Life. 400 pages left, a little over 400 pages left. I think I can do it. I think I'll be good. I am very excited to read it, and I'm a lot more engaged now, so I think I'll be able to fly through the second half a lot faster. In fact, I'm kind of hoping I'll be able to finish it by the end of today or into early tomorrow morning if I stay up that late, which potentially I will. But anyway, still loving this. There was a really dramatic and intense event that just happened that I just need to get past and see what happens because I'm really upset about it. So anyway, I also spent the other night, instead of reading this, I decided to spend about an hour the other night making a playlist for this book, which I don't usually do, but there's just certain books that end up inspiring me, just certain music, certain types of music come to mind, and I just want to make a playlist about it, especially when I love the book. So I've made a little playlist for this book. The first one on that list, that went on that list, was Hey Jude by the Beatles, which if you've read this, you may have some idea of why. I mean, the main character's name is Jude. That's a huge part of it, but also the lyrics of the song sort of work with what's going on in this book. So anyway, that was really fun, but yes, I just need to finish this, and like I said, I hope I can do it by the end of today, actually. Song of Achilles has not really happened at all. I'm only like 20 pages in, which isn't too bad, honestly, but I do need to finish this as well. So hopefully if I do end up finishing this today, or almost finishing this today and then finishing it tomorrow, I'll have enough time in the next 2 days after that to finish this all the way through. I also should mention, it's not really part of this vlog, but I do need to get to a Shakespeare play. Like, I really do, to wrap up. I would hate to have that be the one thing again, like last year, that I don't get to for 2022 goals, because last year I'm pretty sure I just had one Shakespeare play left and I didn't do it, and I just don't want it to happen again. So I have looked up actually his shortest plays and found a couple of the ones that are short that I have not read yet. Unfortunately, a lot of his shortest plays I have already read, which was kind of sad, but anyway, I found a couple options. So I'm thinking either tomorrow or Saturday I'm going to try to listen to / read along with one of his shorter plays so that I can get that goal done. Is this a lot? Maybe. But adding up the pages for this together, it's like over 700 pages, maybe just under 800 pages. Maybe, I guess it's probably between 750 and 800 pages, which is a lot. But when I don't have anything going on in the next couple of days, I have a lot of time to do it. So I think it's very possible for me. Will it happen for sure? I don't know. I will say, if it gets to New Year's Eve and I have not finished these, but I'm close to finishing them, or hopefully by that point I will have already finished this, but if I'm like close, like even just over halfway on this one and just very close to finishing it, I'm going to mark it as read for 2022 before the day is out. And then I'll just finish it in next year, because I feel like if I read the majority of this, it will just count for 2022 if I read it in 2022. So anyway, but hopefully I will just be able to finish, meet all my goals, and yeah, we'll just see what happens. I will update you, hopefully, most likely, definitely, almost, when I finish this and then move more into Song of Achilles. Hey guys, so sorry if there ends up being glares on my glasses. I'm trying to get it into a better position, but it's just not working and I just don't really want to find somewhere else to do this. So here I am. I have finished A Little Life. It is about 1:30 on the 30th of December, and I have finally finished this book. Where to begin? I think I might do a thematic rambles on this book because there's just so much I feel like I could talk about. Let's start with some issues I had with it, and then we'll go into all the things I loved about it. We'll start with my rating because that will kind of give you an idea about how I feel about all of these things in general. I ended up on Goodreads giving this a 5 stars. Obviously, that there was no real thought behind that. On Storygraph, though, where I'm able to do decimals, I considered doing 4.75 stars. But I just felt like that even was still too low. I felt like if I had been able to do a decimal of my choosing, I would have done like 4.9. So I ended up on Storygraph as well, just giving it 5 stars, but it's a bit of a lower 5 stars for me. And really the reason why it isn't quite 5-star level for me is because I felt like before I read this, I had heard people refer to it as like misery porn, and I understand why it's referred to in that way, because it is very sad. A lot of sad things happen. Basically anything that could happen in life that is sad feels like it happens in this book. And our main character Jude is suffering he suffered a lot of trauma as a child for the first 15 years of his life, and even honestly beyond that, he was suffering a lot of trauma, and it's something that he's never been able to get past. The symptoms have always stayed with him, and there's kind of a question of like whether there is any way that he could overcome the terrors of his past and the situations he's been in, and it's just hard to know. And of course, I'm a tragedy girl, so I don't usually mind that too much, and obviously in this case I did end up really loving this book, but I do feel like this book could have been like 200 pages shorter and still gotten the same point across. I just felt like the length of this book made the suffering that Jude is experiencing, the consistent self-harm, and these memories of these terrible things happening to him, they started becoming so redundant that I know on some level that the author may have been wanting to kind of point out that for people who are dealing with things like this, it is constant. It does kind of get annoying the way they're thinking irrationally about how other people feel about them, how they're thinking irrationally about themselves, and part of them knows that, but they just can't stop. And so just representing how it is a constant thing throughout their life. It's not something that just goes away, that can just be magically fixed. And for some people, it may never fully be fixed. But I feel like I understood that concept and felt that way halfway through the book. Like, I just feel like there were a couple hundred pages that didn't need to be there for me to still feel that point being brought across. And I feel like it became to a point where the author was just trying to torture the readers. And I didn't love that aspect. There were even parts where I got kind of bored, even though really sad things were still happening, because I was like, it's the same thing. And I already have been annoyed by it. I've already been bored by it. So I just felt like there was like at least 100 to 200 pages where I had already been feeling annoyed and bored with the situation. And then it just I kept being annoyed and bored. And I was like, you got the point across. I don't need this anymore. So there was that. There were also times where I felt like there were certain topics and discussions being brought up about the characters and between the characters that went on for pages and did not need to go on for pages and pages. Like, I understood, it felt redundant. They were rehashing the same points and the same ideas about certain topics. For example, sex between the two main characters is a big issue in this book due to Jude's past, and so it's kind of a discussion of what both people want in the relationship, what both are able to handle, things like that, which is a good discussion to have. And especially with Jude's trauma and everything, it makes a lot of sense to have this kind of conversation and this thought process that's going on in the characters' heads. But I didn't need 15 pages of it just basically talking about that the whole time. Like, it could have been cut down to maybe 2 or 3, and I still would have understood how this character was feeling about it and what they were thinking about it without you having to go on for pages and pages and basically saying the same thing over and over and just cycling through the same thoughts. Like, it got very redundant a lot in this book, and I just felt like it didn't need to, and it still would have been just as effective. It also was a very slow read. It's very slow going. It was hard to read a lot at once. In fact, these last 400 pages that I've read between yesterday and today were really hard to get through, especially with that redundancy. It did help that the second half did kind of take a turn compared to the first half, but it still just was a lot of sad stuff. The ending, I actually thought, so I had predicted one thing happening, one plot twist that happens at the end of the third to last part of the book, and I had a theory something like that was going to happen. I just didn't know exactly how it would, and that was really tough. And then the ending I also started to think might happen, but I did think I would be really angry if that ending was what happened, but I ended up not feeling quite as angry. I think the way it was written actually worked out. We were able to be in a perspective when it came to the ending and what happened in the ending that I think was very effective. And I will say, I think the title of this book also is very well chosen. I think that this book, even though it is a lot of sad stuff, there's also a lot of happy things, and there's also a lot of mundane things. And it just ends up feeling like we're really living this man's life with him and his friends' lives with them, and understanding, life is hard and there's a lot of struggle, but you choose to keep working with it for the sake of those happier moments and for the sake of those people you love. And even though the end isn't necessarily happy, I still feel like it's still discussing that same point and just kind of discussing of how much can one person handle, but also is there always another option? And personally, I do believe there is, but I also do believe that some people may struggle more than others to be able to see it and be able to grasp hold of those other opportunities and options. Not going into too much more detail about it, I did cry a lot throughout this book, both happy tears and sad tears. There were moments where I was so happy for the characters. I will say my favorite part about this book is how much I came to love the characters. They were all so sweet in their different ways, and they were imperfect people, but they felt very real. And I loved the connection. I remember a lot of people talking about with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, feeling like Evelyn Hugo was like a real person that they wanted to research and look up her movies and stuff. And I did feel that on some level in that book, but there is a character actually in this who is an actor who felt even more real to me. Like every character in this felt very real. And it's definitely a book where you can feel the characters in the end continuing on after, and you can imagine that happening because they felt so real. So the best part of this book by far is the fact that these people become so real to you, and they're so lovable even in their imperfections. And that's part of what makes this book so sad, is because it's not just sad things happening, it's sad things happening to people you come to care about as you read this book. Yeah, it's really incredible. It's a really good book. I'm surprised at how much I liked it, because I think I'd mentioned earlier in this video, this was kind of the one that I have thought about in the past the least. I still have thought about getting it several times throughout my life, which is why it worked for this video, but it hasn't been nearly as much as the other two. It hasn't drawn me in nearly as much as the other two, so the fact that I love it so much, and I think it's very possible it could be my favorite of the three, it's just very interesting because it's the one I have thought about getting the least amount of times. So anyway, that's how I felt about this. Like I said, I think I might do a thematic ramble because I think there's a lot to discuss in this book. I loved the way the story was told. It's non-linear. There's a lot of jumping back and forth in time, and it's done very effectively. I think sometimes non-linear stories can struggle to make sense a lot and really pull you out of the book because you don't know what's happening, but I felt like this one did it really well. There were moments where I had to be like, okay, wait, where is this happening? And had to kind of think about it, but it wasn't too difficult to follow. All that to say, really loved this. I want to finish Song of Achilles by tomorrow at midnight. So that is the goal, but I do need a break because, like I said, that book is really sad. And I know Song of Achilles is also going to be really heartbreaking by the end of it. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch Glass Onion, the second Knives Out movie on Netflix. I've been really wanting to the past couple of days, and I want to. I know it will be funny and will be a good, nice palate cleanser. Then I'm going to listen to / follow along with a Shakespeare play. I think I've decided to do Two Gentlemen of Verona because it is a short play by Shakespeare, and it's a comedy, and I think between these two books I could definitely use a comedic work, and then I can jump back into Song of Achilles. Like I said in my last clip, I think I have read about 20 pages of Song of Achilles. Here it is. I have read 20 pages of this and have liked it so far. I think this one will be a much faster read too than A Little Life. In fact, I know it's going to be because, first of all, there's a lot less words per page, excuse me. The space between lines is larger, the font is larger, so I think, and it's just a shorter book in general. It's not even 400 pages. So I think this will be a much easier read to get through quickly, which will be good. And then I'll probably take a couple days off of reading because at least I won't be reading quite as much the couple days after tomorrow because I just will probably need a break after all this reading. But like I said, I'm going to watch Glass Onion, going to get through Two Gentlemen of Verona, and then I will probably pick up Song of Achilles at that point, which I don't know what time it will be, so it might be dinner time as well. Anyway, let's just stop this clip here and I will update you probably once I finish Song of Achilles, unless I have something I desperately need to say before then. Hey guys, so it is time to wrap up this vlog. Forgive my pile of pillows and blankets behind me. I tried to hide it, honestly, with the angle of the camera, but it wasn't quite working. So it's just there. I keep my pillows and blankets there. So like I said, I'm wrapping up this vlog. I did end up finishing The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I technically finished it at 2:30 on New Year's Day in the morning, but I still counted it as my last book of 2022 because I was almost done by the time we got to that point. So anyway, yes, I have finished finished this and I ended up enjoying it. It wasn't any higher than a 4-star. I gave it just a solid straight 4-star, which I give to books that I just really enjoy but maybe don't have the X factor that make it a little bit higher. In this case, I just felt like I didn't connect with it as much as I did with Circe, and maybe part of the problem was that I read it so fast. Maybe if I had read it slower, I would have enjoyed it and gotten into the characters a little bit more. I also, I guess, I don't know how to put this. Basically, Madeline Miller doesn't necessarily have a lot of dialogue in her books. She does have some, more than some authors, but it's not super regular. There's a lot of just kind of storytelling, like this is what's happening, in a much more poetic and lovely way than what I just said, but still not a ton of conversations going on. And I think I noticed it more in this because in this case, Achilles and Patroclus are together all the time, and so there's always people around. Whereas in Circe, I didn't notice it quite as much. It didn't bother me quite as much because she is alone a lot of the time. So it makes sense that there wouldn't be a lot of conversations. But in this, where we're building up not only just in a setting where there's a lot going on, there's a lot of people, we're also building up this relationship that's very central to the story between Achilles and Patroclus. It felt odd to not have very much dialogue. It's similar to my gripe a little bit with Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, where I felt like I didn't get to see the relationship build up. I will say I think it was better built up in this, so there is that. But I feel like I didn't really get to know these characters and their relationship well enough to really love it for me personally. And maybe part of that too is I had just read A Little Life, which is very, very good at building up this relationship between Willem and Jude. And so maybe I was just spoiled with that, but I did notice that, again, it wasn't as bad for me as in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So I definitely cared more about them and their relationship than I did in that book, but just not as much as I do in other books. I also felt like this book should have been a bit longer. I feel like if you're covering the whole Trojan War, especially from the perspective of characters that are very heavily involved in like everything going on, like Achilles is a soldier and is a big deal, and so if you're focusing on them as characters, I feel like you need to spend a little bit more time with the war, with building up these characters. I feel like Briseis, I really liked her portrayal, but I feel like I wish I had gotten a little bit more of the buildup of her relationship with Patroclus, a little bit more firsthand experience with them having conversations and stuff. We got a little bit, which I appreciated, but I wish she had been developed a little bit more. And I think had this book been drawn out a little bit longer and had built up the setting and everything going on and the characters a little bit more, then I would have been a little bit more invested than I was. I think this length worked for Circe because her story, there's not quite as much going on in her story, and there's a lot more for Madeline Miller to fill in. Whereas I feel like with this, there was a lot that could have been gone into depth with. So anyway, I feel like it should have been longer. I wish there had been a little more dialogue so I could have seen more interactions between the characters, seen their relationship build up that way a little bit better. I will say as well, I could tell I wasn't quite as invested in the characters because I didn't cry at the end. I did get a little bit like the sting of tears in the back of my eyes. It wasn't like absolutely nothing, but it wasn't much. Granted, I did read it very late at night, and sometimes when I'm that tired, I just can't cry. My eyes are too tired to cry. So that could have played a hand, but I also just felt like I just wasn't invested enough in the characters to feel that emotionally attached, emotionally drained after what happens in the end, which I guess I could talk about because it's not really spoilers if you know the story of the Iliad at all, if you just know Achilles' story and Patroclus' story, but I'm not going to say it in case people want to go into this not knowing anything about that myth. But Madeline Miller's exploration of ancient Greece and Greek mythology, the world of Greek mythology, is always beautifully done. I really love it. I will say as well with Circe, between Circe and this, I feel like with Circe, I like the setting of being amongst the gods a little bit more than being directly involved with the goings on of mortals like this book is, just because I just liked the feeling of the setting and of her experiences. So anyway, all that to say, I did like Circe better. But I did like this better than Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Hey guys, Editing Tori here. There were a couple of points that I didn't quite get to in my thoughts, so before I go into my ranking of all three books, first of all, one other negative thing was there's one scene towards the beginning of this book, like I guess it's like halfway-ish through this book, that I just felt was very strange and then was never addressed. That is an event that occurs between Patroclus and a woman in this book, which I'm not going to go into details for obvious reasons. But I just felt like it was weird, and then it just was never brought up again, and so it was just, yeah, that was a really random scene to me, and maybe it was addressed and I just totally brushed over it, but anyway, I just felt like it was a really strange scene to include in this book. But a more positive thing that I'll end this kind of discussion about this book on is that I really liked the way Madeline Miller did the ending. Even though it didn't make me cry, I really like how she pulled everything together, and especially how this story is told from Patroclus's perspective. I think what she ended up choosing to do with it was just beautiful. So I will say, especially now that I'm editing it like a week or so later after reading it, that is the part of the book that has come back to my mind the most, is how it ended. So, and how Madeline Miller described it and what language she uses, and the scene between Patroclus and Achilles' mother. If you have read this, I really, really loved that. So just had to add that in really quick since I forgot to mention it, and we'll get back into my clip. So if I were to rank these, I would put, unfortunately, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid at the bottom of my list. But I do like Evelyn Hugo as a character. I think the writing in this is lovely, and I appreciated the way Taylor Jenkins Reid really brought these characters to life. I just felt like there was a little bit more, it just felt very sexual. Like, it was very about sex, which for some people may be great. For me, it just isn't. Like, I don't need a book that's primarily focused on a relationship but built on sexual attraction. And it hints that it is built on other things, but I just didn't feel like I got to see that, and so I didn't really feel that connection with the relationship because of that. And I felt like the plot twist in the end just kind of felt, I don't know, a bit contrived. Like, I went into the story wanting to read about Evelyn Hugo, and so just throwing in that separate, like, little event just to add a plot twist felt a little bit awkward to me. I didn't love it. It wasn't like a bad plot twist or anything. It just, I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't built up to very well. I just felt like the buildup was the fact that she specifically wanted this journalist to tell her story, and that there must be a reason behind that. But that's like literally all the buildup we really get. And so I felt like it just felt a little out of place within the story. And yeah, I was disappointed. But I still enjoyed it enough to give it, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't actually remember. It would probably be around that, though. Enjoyable, above average, but it was disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. So then after that, I would put The Song of Achilles. Again, 4 stars. I enjoyed it. It was a solid read. Glad I read it, but it just didn't have anything that kind of wowed me or made me feel connected enough with the story to, like, love it. But I do see why a lot of people really enjoy this. Madeline Miller's writing and, like I said, exploration of Greek mythology is just always delightful to read. So very much enjoyed that, even though it wasn't necessarily a new favorite. And then we have the beast of this vlog, which I spent the most time on, is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. In this clip, I won't spend too much time on this because I feel like I've talked a lot about it in this vlog, but suffice it to say, it is my favorite of these 3. It's one of my favorites of the year. I really was moved and grew very attached to the characters in this book. Will I read it again? I don't know. I'll probably keep it just to, like, recommend it to people for sure, and maybe someday, many years in the future, I'll be willing to revisit it. Probably won't be anytime soon though, because it is very heavy, but I did really enjoy it. I'm glad I read it, and I'm impressed. I'm surprised, honestly, like I've said before, that this is my favorite out of the 3, because this was the one that I had least been interested in reading. Not that obviously I was interested in reading it, but it was the one I had thought about the least, the one when I saw it in bookstores, I was like the least inclined to necessarily pick up, mostly because the genre felt like it was a bit out of my comfort zone, a bit out of my wheelhouse, and something honestly I thought I might not enjoy, but obviously I did. So maybe I just need to read a little bit more literary fiction, which I've always kind of wanted to, but I don't know, when I hear synopses of literary fiction, I end up being like, I don't know, it just doesn't sound very intriguing to me. So that's why I don't necessarily read it very often, but maybe I should a little bit more, because I have, thinking back on some other ones that I've read, I feel like there are certain types of literary fiction that do end up meaning a lot to me and having an impact on me. So anyway, I'll probably talk more about that in my favorites of 2022 video with that. But let's wrap this vlog up, because I'm sure it's not short. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've mentioned and what you thought about them, as I would love to know. I hope you are having a great first week of this year, and I will see you next time. Bye!